Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, make a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink and get ready for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. So subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet, and let's get started. What did your boss do that instantly destroyed employee morale? Part 4. Oh boy, how even should I start? A startup with staff members spread over 3 continents. This is the largest setup I can recall. For whatever reason, the client had committed to pre-order thousands of units of our product, which was a pre-consumer release for developers that they intended to use commercially. They refused to pay unless we put in a lot of effort to bring it up to the level the company had promised, expressing dissatisfaction over the fact that it wasn't consumer ready when it came time to execute. At what level? It turns out, our CEO misled all of the developers into believing it was just a dev kit and that we could forego proper QA and UX passes, all while selling them a consumer-ready product. A few of us slept for only 3 hours every night for a week or two in order to make the deadlines. The aforementioned happened while working on a smaller project that had a set release date. I was working on the side project with a junior developer when I was called away to assist with the aforementioned disaster. The junior developer worked incredibly hard to complete all of our major tasks and meet some stretch goals. However, due to a few last-minute bugs and a subpar release package created by another junior developer, the official release was not made until approximately half an hour after the scheduled deadline. The customer yelled at the HR representative at the time, and he concluded that the junior engineer had been mishandled and had not performed up to par. I corrected the HR guy, saying that the project's delay was caused by diverting resources from it, and that the junior developer had accomplished a minor miracle by finishing the project at all. HR then misrepresented our meeting to the CEO, claiming that I had agreed to the junior developer's termination. The HR guy stayed on for almost a year before he made the independent decision to move companies. The same HR specialist was later cited in a business news article as having implemented strict policies to manage difficult-to-work-with foreigners. This was untrue and highly discriminatory. If you're still with me, here are a few additional highlights. The CEO received a project proposal from a gifted engineer and told him it was a great idea, but he should work on it at his next company and put it on the back burner for this one. Thus, he departed and founded his own business alongside a few other men, taking one of our top engineers with him. After being transferred from Australia to Los Angeles, the lead engineer almost lost his job when he discovered what rent was and asked for a raise to meet ends meet. When the CEO decided to move the office to San Francisco 5 months later due to even higher rent, the lead engineer was almost fired again for the same reason. The CEO concluded it was not worth opening a U.S. office, did not propose moving any of the staff members, stopped paying the lead engineer without ever firing him, but refused to support the renewal of his visa, giving him a week or so to leave the country on his own or face deportation. He practically broke when he returned to Australia. CTO yelling and arguing with staff members who do tasks that he only vaguely understood. He emphasized 3 main points of contention. Just trust me, because I said so, and shut up. We decided to hire a U.S. programmer and pay for his relocation abroad. Since all of the company's contracts include a 3-month trial period, we also decided that the developer would work temporarily on site while we completed the necessary paperwork for his visa. If we ultimately decided not to hire him, we would simply send him back home without executing the visa, etc. The new HR guy finally tells someone that he never actually filed the paperwork for the visa because no one told him that we were actually hiring the developer. We'd been meeting with him on a regular basis to inquire about the status of the developer's visa approval, and he's been telling us that it's being handled by outside lawyers. However, 3 months later, the developer's temporary visa is about to expire and the official visa has still not arrived. Our lead engineer replacement was friends with one of the developers that the new HR guy wanted to fire, in order to prevent the two from hearing the news together or from being able to discuss it right away. He suggested dividing them into fictitious meetings. CTO advised against doing it. Then the HR guy told them it was the CTO's idea. This company still employs the new HR guy. When I started working at a gas station a few weeks ago, the hourly wage was supposed to be $11. However, once orientation began at the headquarters of the company, it's a local company, so the CEO decided to appease his ego by constructing a massive building for his headquarters. All of the new hires were informed that the hourly wage was actually $8.50. They promised to review our performance and the 90-day period anywhere on the application, website, or anywhere else. A room full of newly hired employees discovered they'd actually be making $2.50 less than they had assumed when it was not brought up during the interview. In my instance, though, I made the decision to preserve and completed orientation. There was supposed to be training at the store, but there was none. Orientation felt more like a brainwashing and a way to show off how great the CEO is. As hit the fan when I arrived at the store. The fill-in manager was supposed to be there because I was hired in while the store manager was injured. As soon as they hired me, they made the decision to take a trip. Because they had to get me out of the back room and into the system so I could work, there was a fill-in for the fill-in on my first day, and they treated me like an idiot and a burden. They treated me like an idiot once more at the end of my shift because my drawer was missing 50 cents, and they went on to say that it was supposed to be simple to enter our information into the logs at the end of the day. Hint, it wasn't. I was treated like an idiot again. I eventually spoke with HR after that, and they directed me to speak with the regional manager, who continued to act as though I was the idiot and that it was my fault. I immediately gave up. I was called the following day by the fill-in manager who'd hired me, but she refused to listen to anything I had to say regarding my return to work. It was clear that all they wanted was to save their own A. While I was working at the store for a short period of time, I had 5 coworkers who treated me in the same manner, and one of them was actively trying to sabotage me. This is just the managers. Thus, within the first 72 hours of working at the store, I was treated like an idiot and a burden by 3 managers out of the 8 people I encountered. As soon as I called them back, I told them to kiss my behind. I did this because I wanted to maintain my personal dignity. Do you have any absurd tales to tell about your HOA, COA, or neighbors? Part 4. I recently moved into a community managed by a management company. I believe in March 2020, the majority of the owners are, in fact, investors who reside outside of the state or nation. Overall, my rental experience has gone well. The grounds are kept up reasonably well, the neighbors are cordial, and the trash is picked up. Call me surprised, then, when I find a note on my door saying that insurance adjusters will be knocking on doors on Friday, just 3 days away, and that if they're unable to enter the apartment, they'll use a locksmith. After that, I'd have to get a new key by going to the clubhouse. They'd be searching for Hurricane Irma-related interior damage to the units, which was a hurricane that hit 3 years ago. Although I don't believe it's legal, I've been attempting to obtain a duplicate copy of the bylaws because, for whatever reason, I don't currently have them with me. Most likely misplaced during relocation. My landlord said they didn't have it when I called. When I called the HOA, they promised to send it, but they never did, and they haven't returned my calls. I honestly don't know whether I signed allowing them to essentially break in if they needed access to my apartment, because I didn't see anything that dubious looking when I read the rules. However, I'm not exactly happy about having to take the day off to be at home to prevent them from forcing their way into my apartment. A brief update if anyone's curious, the company claimed that the complete package cost $100, so I never received the bylaws. They clarified that the reason for this was that insurance companies were attempting to obtain a payout to fix moisture and water-related problems, but they were refusing to pay. I stayed at home and didn't mind. I was still asleep when my roommate called at 8 in the morning to let me know that the adjusters had arrived. They announced a 9 a.m. start time. Even though it was only an hour, I felt like I wasn't dressed appropriately, my dog wasn't cared for, and I hadn't had time to brush my teeth when I was asked if they could take photos in my bedroom. JFC. The HOA board members who live next door, so I suppose they don't value my little garden of bushes, fruit trees, and potted plants. They have previously discussed the garden with me, but they never said anything unfavorable. I've been gardening for months, and I recently received an email from the HOA telling me that I should move my garden because it's unsightly and nuisance. That, I suppose, is because this is the closest bylaw they could locate to make me relocate the plants. 80% of the time, when I work from home, my cars in the driveway hide the plants from view from the street. Unsightly, in my opinion, deserves to be seen. I wish that instead of trying to misinterpret our bylaws and declare the garden to be a nuisance, my neighbors or anyone else on the board would have just had a conversation with me about it. They said that having potted plants in general is not a problem, just mine specifically. Originally, I would have been happy to comply, but right now I'm too furious. Since they haven't elaborated on what makes it unsightly, I should be able to keep my potted plants in their current location based on their wording. I suppose this is the case because I cultivate food as well as flowers and decorative plants. Recently, without my consent, my neighbors built a fence and attached it to my fence. I'm eager to give them a formal letter telling them to disconnect from my fence and construct their own, even though I never spoke about it before. I joined the board and didn't have any issues with HOAs, but I now feel awkward and alone in my neighborhood. After I began reading up on HOAs, I became aware of how little this group was accomplishing and how inadequately they were adhering to fundamental HOA management. I discovered the HOA rules they were referring to were non-existent when I eventually obtained the bylaws. The president abruptly resigned, and a new president, whom I had not seen at a meeting in a decade, came into power, telling the board that dues were donations, but not to the residents. Then, during a meeting, the former president, who is still essentially in charge of everything, says, "We aren't an HOA?" Who said that, and what? The invitation actually listed the meeting as the HOA quarterly meeting. That's what we're in. There are numerous instances of HOA fraud. I discovered that the common areas are actually parks designated by the city. I'm relieved that I won't have to deal with them after I resigned and told them to speak with an attorney. The dues were incredibly low, just $200 annually for 200 townhouses, but a few board members wanted to change the enigmatic bylaws to include more exterior house inspections. There's weirdness and gossiping now, and I think I'm the crazy one stirring up trouble. All of the other board members are just silent. The main characters are lying outright and acting as though nothing wrong has ever happened. The new president is slandering me. It's unknown or unimportant to the locals. I have a suspicion that rumors are circulating to make sure I don't incite a revolution. I wish homeowners associations didn't exist. Update. If I wanted to escalate and file a complaint, I have some information and documents, although I believe the president and treasurer misled the board about the bank accounts. I don't believe they were stealing, just making unnecessary purchases. Since our last conversation before I left, they have ceased referring to themselves as an HOA and appear to understand that dues are optional. I'll see if this holds. I used to live in an HOA neighborhood. The micromanagement was completely nonsensical. When the board at the time issued a large number of violation notices, called a meeting, and generally infuriated a lot of people, it all came to a head. Like with Al Capone, they were brought down on a technicality after going through everything they could find to attack one of those, a paralegal. As per the law, a 30-day notice was required, and it transpired that their notices of the meeting had been postmarked only 29 days prior. The entire meeting was deemed moot, as verified by their lawyer who was in attendance. The level of hatred in the room was already so great that it could be cut with a knife, and the board decided to resign immediately to avoid dealing with it after it was revealed that they were incapable of following the law despite constantly criticizing everyone else for breaking it. Shortly after, the highly despised property manager who worked for the previous board wasn't a resident and probably had a contract in place so the new board couldn't fire him arbitrarily, found that all 4 of his truck's tires had been slashed. The manager did very little of value other than drive around all the time taking pictures of alleged violations and taping notices on doors. This gentle nudge caused him to resign right away. Since then, I've moved, and no effing HOA was my top priority. Some of the times I asked around, I was told, yes, there is a homeowners association, but they don't do anything. I don't care if it doesn't accomplish anything right now, but if some small-time despots get a hair up their A, that doesn't mean it won't turn into a nightmare down the road. Having one never in the first place is the only remedy. My property is on land that was laid out in the 1920s and is not under a homeowners association, nor is the house directly across the street from me, but every other house on that side of the street is. I ended up on a street that's divided down the middle by a newer development. It's not my problem, so I don't have to give a D about any rules they may have. If you want to watch the part 3, click the link here. Thank you for subscribing and likes and comments. We're very happy to see you all in the comments too. Thanks for support.